American poetry. Oh yes, my dear friends, we have looked at other American poets, and one of my favorites is Robert Frost. Well, today I have a woman poet, Emily Dickinson. And when I think of Emily Dickinson, other poets who come to mind are, of course, the contemporaries. We've got Maya Angelou, for example, and her great feminist poems. We also have other poets like Adrienne Rich. We've got Gwendolyn Brooks. Do look it up. We've already done a poem by her. And we've got Amy Lowell. Oh yes, many more women poets. But the moment I say women poets, don't immediately jump to the conclusion that they're all feminists. Oh, well, what's wrong with being feminists, you may ask? But Emily Dickinson writes very, very subjective poetry. So today, we are going to be looking at A Bird Came Down the Walk by Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson, 1830 to 1886. I know, well remembered, popular, and quite a favorite. And why? Because she wrote a very, very different kind of poetry. She challenged accepted social mores. She did not follow the oft-trodden path of writing poetry. She wanted to experiment, and therefore she experimented with various forms, which was certainly very, very unconventional. Interestingly, though she enjoyed school, she left school at the age of 15 to join a seminary for women. She had 3 other siblings. And we know a lot about Emily Dickinson from her letters to her friends. Can you imagine? Most of her poems were published only after her death. We call them posthumously published. That's what we have to say about her poems. She has left many of her poems in handwritten notes, so we can also see what her handwriting was like. As I mentioned, only 10 of her poems were published during her lifetime. She lived in seclusion. Don't know why she chose to do that, but probably each artist chooses his own way of life, and that's what she too did. A Bird Came Down the Walk. Some editions call it poem number 359. And can you imagine, she wrote about 1,500 poems and did not give a title to even one of them. So what do? What do editors do? What do anthology editors do? They just take the first line of the poem and give it as the title. Many other poets, we are forced to do that because they didn't believe in titles. So this poem is called A Bird Came Down the Walk. And then you ask, what? A bird on the walk? Aren't human beings supposed to be on the walk? Well, that exactly is what this poem is about. She's talking about the interrelatedness of man and nature. Let me begin by reading the poem. A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. And then he drank dew from a convenient grass and then hopped sidewise to the wall to let a beetle pass. These are the first 2 verses of the poem. But I will pause here for us to look at it again. What's happening? A bird is walking. And you have seen birds walking, I'm sure, minahs and crows, and these birds do walk because they're so used to human habitation. They live with us almost, not like the eagle or the vulture, which you might see only up in the sky. So there is this bird, she doesn't tell us what bird it is. The bird walks and what is interesting is the poet is looking at the bird. From where, you may ask? Maybe sitting on the balcony, maybe through a window, maybe on the porch. That's up to your imagination. But it is interesting that the bird is being watched, but the bird does not know it's being watched. And what is the bird doing? He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. Some of us, we might say, oh my God, but well, that's the law of nature. You have the predator and then you have the prey. And somewhere the predator becomes the prey. And so it goes on. Law of nature, cyclical. So here, what does the bird do? It picks a worm, it eats it raw. Obviously, it's not going to get it cooked. And then, like most of us do, we need some liquid, we need some water, we need a drink. So does this bird. And therefore, he drank a dew from a convenient grass. And to me, the next two lines are very important. More caring, more considerate than probably the human being is. What does it do? He hopped sideways to the wall to let a beetle pass. And then we go on. She goes on describing what the bird does. But when human being comes into direct contact with the bird is not too happy. What does she do? She offers him a crumb. And the moment she does that, the bird flies away. The bird is not sure what the intention of this human being is. And then there is a beautiful metaphor as she describes the flight of the bird. What does he do? He unrolled his feathers and rowed him softer home. Then oars divide the ocean, two silver for a seam. Of butterflies off banks of noon, leap splashless as they swim. So think of the oar, think of the bird, think of butterflies, think of water. How smooth it is, this flight of the bird. What a beautiful poem it is. Each poem that you've been listening to and probably going back to read, you look at the figures of speech and you say, oh yes, I know this. Well, some figures of speech are repeated. In this poem also you will find many. But I want to pause for a moment and talk about one of the most oft repeated ones, and that is the simile and the metaphor. Close to each other, but yet different. Close because there is a comparison. And with the use of the word like, it becomes a simile. For example, if you look here, we have something which is very simple. They look like frightened beads talking about the eyes of the bird, right? So it's a simile. Come further down in the poem and you have the metaphor when he says, he unrolled his feathers and more smoothly than oars divide the ocean. There's no like, and therefore it's a metaphor. Got that? Oh yes, metaphors are beautiful figures of speech. Or butterflies leap splashless as they swim. Isn't that lovely? The figures of speech that she uses here. From 1500 poems, why did I choose this poem? Tough question, a tougher answer. Oh, I read them again and again. And I looked at this poem and I said it deals with something which is so important to the human race today. The interaction between nature and man. Don't we owe it to nature to protect it for future generations? And the bird can teach us that, because when a beetle goes by, the bird steps aside. The poet tells us to let it pass. Wish we could do it when we come into conflict with the animals of the world. Let us learn to protect nature. Yes, I love this poem because of that one simple fact, in addition to many, many other reasons, right?